At the summit is our reporter Dave Keating. He joins me live now. Dave, the delegates then entering final days of negotiations in a bid to get a deal. What are the sticking points at the moment?
There's a lot of sticking points, and it's actually looking not great. I mean, we've got 2 days left, according to the schedule, in order to reach a deal here, and they are really far behind. So up until now, the cover text, which is a kind of landing zone for a final agreement, has been only 2 pages. That was prompting a lot of complaints from delegates saying the Egyptians, who are hosting the presidency of this COP27 summit, were not really putting the work in here. Then this morning, we suddenly got that upgraded to 20 pages, which now the delegates are telling me is too much. That's too much to settle in 2 days. I think it's unlikely at this stage that we're going to actually finish at the scheduled end, which is supposed to be tomorrow night. I think we're looking at Saturday night or maybe even Sunday. The big sticking point here is this so-called loss and damage issue. So that would be a fund that's essentially climate reparations from rich countries to poor countries to pay for the effects of climate change that have been caused by the emissions that rich countries have emitted over the past century. If you think about the recent floods in Pakistan, that of course costs a lot of money, and countries are asking for some kind of compensation for that. 130 developing countries want this agreed at this summit. Now, so far, up until now, rich countries like the US and the EU especially have been opposing this. But at the very beginning of the summit, we did get an agreement to at least put it on the agenda. The EU has made some movement. They are starting to make positive noises about an agreement. But the US and Australia are dead set against this idea. The big concern is here they don't want any fund that establishes a legal precedent that rich countries are legally responsible for paying for the damage caused by climate change. Another big problem here with loss and damage, I mean, from what I'm hearing, it's very unlikely we're going to end up with that in the text. Even if we do go through the weekend, it's probably that developing countries need to show their citizens that they fought hard for it. But it's taking up all the oxygen in the room. And the other things that they need to agree are kind of being shot to the sidelines. The big thing is they need to flesh out this very vague commitment that we had last year at COP26 in Glasgow to phase out coal. That needs targets, that needs deadlines. They also need things for ramping up renewables. That also needs deadlines and targets. And that's being thrown to the side, I keep hearing, because loss and damage is such a big issue.
And Dave, I mentioned earlier that meeting between John Kerry of the United States and the Chinese climate envoy. What can you tell us about that meeting and why that's perhaps particularly important?
Well, that was a big breakthrough because actually the Chinese have refused to talk to the U.S. on climate issues since August in retaliation for House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visiting Taiwan. Now, it seems that there was some kind of breakthrough made at the G20 summit in Bali, Indonesia, earlier this week when there was a meeting between President Biden and President Xi that seems to have unlocked the possibility for the climate envoys from the U.S. and China to talk here in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. Was there a big breakthrough in terms of their talks? No, but just the fact that they're talking is a breakthrough in itself. Because as John Kerry pointed out earlier this week at a press conference, you cannot solve climate change without China. They are approaching to be the world's biggest emitter. They are a key factor in trying to mitigate climate change. And this conflict between the U.S. and China has gummed up agreements in the past. Don't forget the 2009 Copenhagen summit, which collapsed spectacularly because China wouldn't commit to a target, and the U.S. said, well, if China won't do it, we won't do it. That's the consistent relationship dynamic in these COP talks. So anytime the U.S. and China are talking, it's probably a good thing for some kind of progress here.
Dave Keating live at the COP27 summit in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. Thanks very much.